Now, please welcome to the stage, Jen Mason-Garb, Executive Director, AIA Chicago.
Hello, good morning. NeoCon Day 3, how exciting. As Nubia, the voice of God, said, I'm Jen Mason-Garb, the Executive Director of the American Institute of Architects here in Chicago. So welcome to Chicago for those of you who are visiting. We first, of course, want to thank NeoCon for inviting AIA Chicago to be the sponsor of this keynote presentation today. We so appreciate the opportunity to present designers and their impact to this audience and designers, all of you as well. So I have the pleasure of welcoming Ruth E. Carter and AIA Chicago member Sharon M. Samuels to the stage. Sharon's going to introduce Ruth in a moment, so I get the joy of talking about Sharon a little bit. She's a Chicago architect with her own design firm, Soul Quest Design Unlimited, but she also has a credential that is quite uncommon among architects in general. Sharon's a member of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. Since 2015, Sharon has worked full-time in art direction, creating sets for some of the most popular movies and television shows filmed in Chicago, which makes her the perfect person to speak with our very special guest today, Ruth E. Carter, about the worlds that she creates on screen. Please welcome Sharon.
Good morning. Ruth E. Carter is an American costume designer best known for turning the Black Panther superhero into an African king. Carter made history as the first Black person to win the Academy Award for costume design and earned Marvel Studios their first Oscar recognition for Black Panther. For Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Carter made history again as the only Black person and Black woman to win multiple Academy Awards in any category. Carter is a graduate of the HBCU Hampton University with a Bachelor of Arts degree in theater arts. She learned to sew at a young age at the local Boys and Girls Club, using her mom's sewing machine to read and design simple patterns. After graduating from Hampton in 1982, she worked in theater in her hometown and then left for Los Angeles. Then in 1988, Spike Lee came calling. At the time, he was an up-and-coming director, and we all know the rest is history. Over 3 decades, Carter has earned 70 credits and collaborated with prolific directors including Lee, Steven Spielberg, Ava DuVernay, and Ryan Coogler. Carter's costumes, created for real and imagined characters, help to enhance the narratives in a variety of films and genres, from biographies such as Malcolm X and What's Love Got to Do with It, to comedies such as Coming to America and Dolomite Is My Name, and films with a social message such as School Days and Do the Right Thing. Carter's outstanding costume design work has been honored with Academy Award nominations in Malcolm X and Amistad, and an Emmy nomination for the reboot of the miniseries Roots. The impact of her career in filmmaking has been recognized with a Costume Designers Guild Achievement Award in 2019, and she is a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which she was granted in 2021. She is also a member of the Board of Governors for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Carter is beloved in her hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts, and was given the key to the city for her achievements in service in 2022. She served as the 2023 commencement speaker at her alma mater of Hampton University, and where she also receives an honorary doctorate. She also holds honorary doctorate from both Suffolk University and Smith College. Let's take a look at a snapshot of Ruth's work.
He's never gonna have any more trouble! Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Big Brother Almighty!
Them.
You must be Black Dynamite.
All in favor, raise your hand. Respect. If you can't do that, then go.
Resist.
They're gonna kill my children.
That means march. That means disturb the peace.
The only way to get through a bigot's door is to break it down.
Whose side you on?
Dolomite.
Cut.
What a totally unexpected surprise.
I am loyal to the throne.
For the tribe!
What's up?
We are vegetarians.
I am queen. Have I not given everything? Wakanda Forever!
And that's the Taru.
Ladies and gentlemen, two-time Academy Award winner Ruth E. Carter.
Hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you. Thank you. I guess some of you were surprised. Did you know I had done Yellowstone? You see, I've been doing this a long time, long before they invented Spanx. Can you imagine? But thank you, and I'm honored to be here to talk to fellow designers. As you know, as an architect and a designer yourself, you know all of the pitfalls and the hurdles that we go through to create worlds. And I'm going to take you through the creation of the world of Wakanda. How many of you have heard of Wakanda? Okay. Yes, well, you know it doesn't exist, right? Okay. Yes. Well, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee back in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement, They created the Black Panther comics. They felt that the Black community needed a superhero, and so they created the Black Panther. And then Ryan Coogler wrote and directed it as a movie. But, you know, he also felt that he couldn't direct a movie about a place in Africa, having never had gone there before. So he went to Africa, and he stayed with the Basotho people in South Africa and had really a wonderful experience. And then he and Hannah Beekler, the production designer, they got together and they wrote a Bible, a Wakandan Bible, which included all of the elements of the design of Wakanda. Because, you know, in the comics, they're really small boxes. You know, you get a sense of the world, but there's only so much you can do with characterization and world building in the comics. So they had to create the concept of Wakanda. And there it is, sitting right there in the northern part of Africa, central north, and doesn't exist there either. Can't take a plane, can't take a train, a road to nowhere. But they did create this world that we were given, this Wakandan Bible, 300 pages. And it actually laid out the city of Wakanda just like any modern city, with a central rail system, a central park, a business district, a medical district, a Soho. And we also used the tribes of Africa. And as you know, there are thousands of tribes around Africa. There's, you know, so many tribes. We just used 12 to be inspired by. One of them was the, what we call the Basotho tribe, the border tribe, based on the Basotho people of South Africa. And this is where Ryan stayed when he went to Africa. He stayed with this community of people, and he fell in love with their culture, their nomadic way, their horse riding skills, and he really wanted to incorporate the Basotho lifestyle, and especially their blankets, into the world of Wakanda. And so what we do as the costume department, we come up with the community. And one of the ways that we showed how Afrofuture lives in a world that has not been colonized is to show them honoring culture, using technology, and for us, infusing it into the superhero model. And so we present these sketches. We also upgrade them to make them look like they're modern people. They're not just coming into this world of Wakanda with tradition. They're also coming in with modern ideas and technology. And so this blanket that we used in the story was a central part of the story, in that the Basotho blankets were brought in from South Africa, and Ryan said he wanted to infuse vibranium on one side of the blankets so they could use them as shields to protect them in battle. You know what vibranium is, right? Okay, and that doesn't exist either. Okay. The merchant tribe was really inspired by the communities in Mali, the Tuareg people, and we called them the merchants in Wakanda. Again, we created our sketches and we modernized the look so that we could create this world. And this is how it played out in the Warrior Falls. We did borrow from other tribes as well. Like you see, the tribal elder there is the woman with the big Fulani earrings on, and she's standing next to her fierce warrior. Also, there's a part of this world building. Here you see the mining tribe. They mine the vibranium of Wakanda. And you see their tribal elder is there with the wig that has the Himba braids, where the Himba tribe, they use the shea butter and the clay soil, and they put it on their bodies, they put it in their hair. And, you know, it's been said that this is something they do to ward off mosquitoes or to be a sort of an antiseptic, but really they just like the way they look. And so we used this image for our tribal elder. On her head is something that I borrowed from another film that I had done, Roots Reboot. You saw it in the trailer there, that my reel. And during the process of getting this wig placed on this actress's head, the hair department asked me if I had something that I could put on her head to mask a line of demarcation where the hair began and the skin started. And I had this in my office, something that I loved from the movie I had done before, so I sent my PA to my office to get this piece, and we put it on her head. And it looked like it just was meant to be. Standing next to her is her fierce warrior. Now, in the comics, this Maasai headdress was seen in tribal council. In the comics, they get together to discuss all of the policies of Wakanda, and it's called the Tribal Council. And at the Tribal Council was a Maasai leader with a big headdress, as you see here. And I really wanted this, this image in the film as we were world building. But at our Tribal Council in the movie, Ryan Coogler said, I kind of want to see the guy with a big lip plate. I don't know if you remember the movie. There was a guy in Tribal Council. He had a large lip plate. And I thought, does that mean I don't get to get my Maasai in this film? And I thought, there is this time in the film, Warrior Falls, where everyone gets to come out in their traditional garb. So I will put this Maasai there, but I can't spend the money on it like I would for a principal character. So I went to Pier 1 Imports. And I found a beaded placemat. And I cut a hole in it. And you don't know how hard that hole was to cut. Those placemats are made really, really well. And you know, late one night I sat there and I painted that bead work, and my crew came in the next day and I had them add all the feathers and fur to the outside of the headdress, and I got it in the film for about $29.99. Thank you. Really proud of that moment. You know, forget making the Black Panther suit for thousands of dollars. So here is the lip plate, and he is the River Tribe elder. He's standing next to his fierce warrior, played by Lupita Nyong'o as the River Tribe warrior. And we created this world. It's a $1.5 billion franchise. But before it was seen by anyone, we were creating this world. And this picture in particular was taken just before we finished filming. No one knew about the Black Panther. No one knew about the film. They were still asking me if it was The Lion King. Is it coming to America? Is it like that? I loved Coming to America. I loved it too, but no, this is not Coming to America. And as we took this special picture for Entertainment Weekly's exclusive look at Black Panther, and we assembled our actors on this set, and I stood back and I looked at them, I realized as I saw them all together, Zuri, the high priest, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Killmonger, who comes back to Wakanda to avenge his right to the chair, to the throne. Nakia with her ring blades in green. The Dora Milaje, Okoye, the leader of the Dora Milaje, the highest ranking female fighting force of Wakanda. Below her, Shuri, the head of the Wakandan design group. Next to her, Queen Ramonda, the queen of Wakanda. And standing next to Ramonda, the late, great Chadwick Boseman, who was our Black Panther. When I stood back and I looked at this picture, I was jumping for joy. I knew we had done something special, and it was one of those days where, you know, publicists are walking by and photographers are trying to get their lenses together and the lighting right. And I thought, does anyone see this? And it went on to make $1.5 billion. So here's my role as the costume designer. I take on many tasks, and one of them was to take the Panther suit that they used in Captain America Civil War and redesign it. Some of the issues that they had with the suit was that they felt that the helmet was a little clunky. They really wanted to make it a little more stealth and redesign it for this new film. When it was in Captain America Civil War, it was made at the last minute, and there were several problems. So I needed to understand those problems. So I asked Chadwick Boseman to come into my office and put on the Panther suit. That's one way to get Chadwick Boseman in your office. So he came in, he put on the suit, he started doing his moves, his karate stretches, and I was mesmerized. He put the helmet on, and it was like magic. There is something about these superhero suits that really just bring you into the fantasy of superheroes, and in our case, of Afrofuture. And so I looked over at Chadwick, and he looked at me, and he says, yeah, but I can't really breathe out of my nose with this helmet on, and I can't lift my arms really above this. And I thought, oh God, the Panther can't breathe out of his nose. So we went on to design a new suit. And one of the things that we did was, you can see right there around his nose area, we made a trap door right here. So he could take that trap door off and breathe when he was doing his karate moves. And in a post, visual effects would put it back on, because he gets scanned. It's a process, it's a complicated process, but he does get scanned so that when they want to take that little trap door off so he could breathe, they can easily put it back on in post. The other thing that we did was we created a much sleeker suit. This looks a lot sleeker than the first one you saw. And it was done with the thinnest Euro jersey. Underneath this suit is a muscle sculpt. Sorry, guys. There is a muscle sculpt. And on top of it lays this thin skin of Euro jersey that we put a special surface design that we call the Okavango triangle. You can see that triangle on the suit. And the triangle is seen in so much of the artistry around Africa. It represents the family, the father, the mother, the child. So I wanted to make that connection between the Panther suit and Africa, since we were actually creating a movie about the Panther in his world of Africa, in his rule and his kingdom of Wakanda. So it was important that we not only see this Panther suit, this cat suit basically, this thin suit, that it also have the feeling of Africa. The other part of this suit was the veining. If you remember in the movie, when he's met with that kinetic energy, the veining lights up purple. So we talked about how we were going to design the veining around. This one was designed with Ryan Meinerding of the Marvel design department. So we met all the time about, what is this veining going to look like? Should we put Wakandan language all over the suit? But we knew that the fans were going to try to figure out what it said. So they were trying to figure out what it said. It took weeks to import this language, and finally they said, you know, just put a tribal marking around the suit. So that's what happened. On the helmet, though, there is some Wakandan language, you know, that speaks to the prowess of, you know, the rule of the Black Panther. We also needed to know what the Panther looked like when he was in his normal everyday life. And you see this image of Chadwick wearing what is called a Nigerian senator suit. Normally, the Nigerian senator suit is just a tunic and an easy pair of pants, but it has beautiful embroidery around the neck. So we created this cutaway coat for Chadwick to wear. The other part of Afrofuture and technology for building this world was seen on Queen Ramonda, who wears this ishikolo. The ishikolo is, in South Africa, the married woman's hat. Married women wear this hat. And I really love that. In the comics, when you see Queen Ramonda, she has her ishikolo on, but she's got yoga pants on, and she's barefoot, and she's still Queen of Wakanda. However, we really wanted to make her known as the queen at first glance. So we took this ishikolo idea and we brought it to Julia Corner, who was a professor of architecture at UCLA. And she and I met on several occasions, and we talked about making this hat with a 3D printer. And now she had been working with Iris Van Herpen, making wearable art pieces out of the 3D building process. And they were using a material in the 3D world that was now more flexible, that I could bring into costume design. So Julia created the algorithms. We sent the file to Belgium to have this crown printed, because in Belgium, it could come out as one piece. It could be printed as one piece. And if you, I'm sure as architects, you build these little maquettes, these little smaller worlds, and you have 3D printers in your office. But this hat was fairly large, and so we went to the place that had a printer large enough to print this all as one piece. And it came out in a powder keg, and that powder keg is, that powder cube is shaken away, and inside lives this hat. And so it took us about 6 months to get this one printed properly, because sometimes it comes out and it's defective. We also printed her shoulder mantle, but the color illustration here shows you how many pieces we printed the shoulder mantle in, and then once we got the pieces back to our workshop, we put it together. This is another view of the different sides of the shoulder mantle for Queen Ramonda. And this is how it works on set. Usually on any given film, you go to a set and there's a backdrop and a set and a chair and something to sit on. In Marvel films, there's just blue. So, but there's always costumes. There are some films that have this process of just having mocaps. You know, when you think of Avatar and some of those films that actually create the costumes in computer, but mostly the costumes are created because visual effects people really do want the creative element that comes from costume design. And I appreciate that. And as I said, Ryan Coogler went to South Africa and stayed with people, the Basotho people, who made these magnificent blankets. And he came back and he said, I want to use these blankets as shields. So I imported from South Africa 150 of these blankets to use in the film. Here's the illustration of the blankets to show you again. And we went to Marvel, and we, before I do that, I'm gonna go back. We went to Marvel, don't move. Okay, we went to Marvel and we showed them the blankets and they thought they were stiff. You know, they had a heavy pile on them. They thought that they didn't work. They didn't have the movement of a nice shield or a nice movement. And so it was close to Christmas time, so Christmas was over because we had to stay and figure out how to make these Basotho blankets more supple. And one of my assistants said, hey, you know, I think there's 2 fibers in here, one synthetic, one cotton. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to fire it up. I'm going to get a torch to it and I'm going to burn it down so I get a thinner blanket. And he did, came back in 15 minutes. We had a thinner blanket, but it smelled awful. We tried everything to get the smell out, vodka, Everything. It wouldn't come out. Then my other assistant, Caroline, said, you know, I'm just going to take a men's razor and I'm going to shave the pile down. 2 hours later, after she shaved both sides, we had our thin blanket and we printed our vibranium on one side, and we sent this iPhone video to Marvel to get approval, and the blanket was now thin and approved. Again, sometimes it's the simple things that make something work. The Dora Milaje, the highest ranking female fighting force of Wakanda, they protect the king. One of the fan favorites, everybody wanted to know what the Dora Milaje costume would look like. We created it from this sketch, from the comics, and as you can see in the comics, they are bombastic. They are the real women of Wakanda. But we didn't want them in cheerleader skirts or triangle tops. We wanted them to be taken seriously and in uniform. So we took this sketch and we turned it around. We brought in this beautiful red color inspired by the Maasai. We turned the sketch around and we started to adorn the female form with this uniform. We moved the tabard down. We created a leather harness. We were inspired by the Himba women who took the calf skins and stretched the edges and decorated the skins with all kinds of metal. We created this harness that was beaded down the center front like the Turkana tribe. We added neck rings from the Ndebele tribe of South Africa. We gold-plated them or silver-plated them so they would feel like jewelry. And we created a costume that any woman or child would be empowered and proud to wear. And here's how it turned out. We have scarification, we have the Ndebele rings, we have the Turkana beadwork down the front, we have the Panther buckle, we have the Himba leather skirt, back skirt with the adorned edges, we have the Panther buckle and the shoulder armor. You remember M'Baku, he says, we are vegetarians. He was like the most fun character to build. They're based on the Dogon tribe of Mali. And there was so much excitement in looking at this tribe and all the elements of wood carving and things that they do. One of the biggest things was their celebration of the solstice, where they wear these grass skirts and these masks that shoot up to the skies. They're one of the first astronomers in history. And so as we created this look, Marvel thought, you know, I don't know, skirts on guys in battle. So I studied this sculpture from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I love the mane on it, and I wanted to bring some of those elements into the mane. And then the Jabari tribe men showed up for their fittings, and they were like football players. And I thought, hey guys, I got a skirt for you in the back. That was hard. But I also added a little leather piece, a leather component. They live in a mountainous area where it's snowy, and so we added this leather skirt to the inside of the grass skirt, and we frosted it, and we added the boots, and we sent this video, this iPhone video, to Marvel to approve the skirt. And it was approved. So many elements. It took us about 1.5 years to actually create all of these elements of this story. Michael B. Jordan, you know, real tough job I got. Michael B. Jordan. Did I say Michael B. Jordan? Yeah, Michael B. Jordan and his vest. But you know, the Afrofuture allowed you the freedom to be creative and to think about technology and to think about how we develop our story in this way. And Shuri, who was the head of the Wakandan design group, was someone I really wanted to show differently than someone in a lab with a lab coat on. I wanted her to have these overlays, so I created overlays for her character. One is this organza sweatshirt that she would just walk into. Hey, she's a 16-year-old. She's just going to walk in the lab, you know, like any 16-year-old and just go to work. So I thought she could have these overlays. The other one is this mesh over her dress. But we also created her battle costume, which encompassed a lot of people and other designers working with us. And they created her arm cannons, or her arm mitts there. Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia and her ring blades, also a superhero in her own right. And a lot of times when we create this story, they have to work, they have to move, they have to do stunts in them. And so we approach them in some of the same ways that we approach the Panther suit. The fabric has to be movable and stretchable, and you know, they have to be able to do their work. Even though the design comes in, you have to also think about the movement. And this is the way we take culture and infuse it in a superhero model. Let me show you those two images again. We take culture in Afrofuture and we infuse it with technology into a superhero model. And you can see clearly those influences. And that's how we make history. Thank you very much.
There's more in store. We're going to reset, and then there's going to be a Q&A. So get your questions ready.
How many of you saw Black Panther? How many of you saw it more than once? You've got questions.
All right. Ruth. So that was great, everyone. So we learned a whole bunch about Black Panther. So I'm actually going to go to a couple questions. We're all architects and designers in this room, and I think, you know, that we were talking, there's a big correlation between design fields, you know, that we could talk about. So in your book, I read for Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee said to you, it's the hottest day of the year, right? And so kind of what I want to know is, how do you start thinking about when a director says to you, this is how I want this scene to feel?
Yeah.
How do you start thinking about that?
You do have a lot of meetings, just like any of us in design, when you're working as a collaborative. It's a highly collaborative medium, filmmaking, and so you're having a lot of conversations with the director, with the production designer. Where are we shooting? What time of year is it in the story? It's the middle of the summer. It's one of the hottest days, and it's been known that, you know, on hot days, people's tempers flare and things happen. And in New York City, it was known that the murder rate went up. And so he really wanted to be the heat to be almost like another character in the film. And so we went about gathering all of the elements that we needed to create the story, whether it be making a bunch of shorts and tank tops and all of the things that, you know, make up the summer. But the biggest thing that we had to do for the visual element of creating a hottest day of the summer was sweat. Everyone had to be glistening. Everyone had to have sweat on their clothes. And we shot Do the Right Thing. We started shooting in, I believe, the end of June, and we went past Labor Day. And it's one story day. So you come to my department, you get a pair of shorts, you get a t-shirt, and some tennis shoes. We might have several of the same thing, multiples, for you to get through the shooting process. But by Labor Day, it's kind of cold out, and I'm still squirting you with some sweat. But that's what we had to do in order to sort of really show the temperature of the story.
Okay, so it's a temperature.
Yeah.
So speaking of temperature, let's move into color, because I know you use color a lot, and I know it influences your design.
Yeah.
And then when you're working, so then you work, and you also work with a production designer who has a vision for the sets. Does that ever influence your design, or do you change it once you come back?
It's constantly changing, you know, things are always morphing as every designer understands the world that you're building, how the elements come together. They have constraints like location. Sometimes we're in practical locations, sometimes the location is augmented, and there are elements that are built into it. But it's not unlikely that a production designer will stop by my office and bring me paint chips, bring me wood samples, bring me pictures of furniture, bring me a sketch of the actual scene. With Marvel, there are these worlds that are sketched out. They're called keyframes. And we are together looking at these keyframes so we understand the world that we're going into. Because sometimes with Marvel films, as I showed you, you don't see anything when you get to set. All you have is what the production designer designed on paper. And so you have to constantly remind yourself of where you are so that you can put these elements inside of that world that was designed by the production designer. So, you know, all of those elements of color are shared constantly.
Okay. Awesome. Let's talk about Black Panther in comparison to one of your other movies, Coming to America.
Oh, okay.
So you did the sequel to the first Coming to America. It's called, guys, it's Coming to America, right? Not Coming to America 2. And so both of those take place in fictional African countries, right?
Yeah, yeah. What's your question? Before I give you an answer.
Before you give me an answer. So so we know that Black Panther is very technical and very futuristic, and then Coming to America, I guess, can be seen as more of, I guess, what we would think an African culture would be on screen.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that differently?
Well, I was at a distinct advantage because when I first started working on Black Panther and everybody thought, you know, is this going to be like Coming to America? And I said, no, nothing like Coming to America. This is not Coming to America, people, but it was the first glimpse at African royalty. But because we are doing a Marvel film that usually has battles, it's a lot more serious, we had the comics to rely on, it was a totally different take, and I made sure of it. We were not colonized on Black Panther, so no Ankara fabric. That came from the Dutch. And thank you. And so going into Coming to America, I had an open field because I avoided it on Black Panther, and I couldn't believe I had even gotten that movie. So here we are with this model of the first Coming to America with the big gaylays, the big turbans, the big dresses, like all of these big looks that we remember. Eddie Murphy playing several characters. But the one thing that I noticed when I looked back at Coming to America was the colonization. And I said, okay, that's where I'm going to switch it. So I went to about 24 African designers that were both in this country and in Africa, and I involved them in the creation of the looks for Coming to America because I wanted it to be a different take on this comedy that was about African royalty in Africa. So it's important to me that we incorporated like their story, because their story is based on their real lives and their their origin story, their heritage. So I went to, Laduma Maxcosa, he's from South Africa, and he does all of the Ndebele prints. It was just a wonderful experience to have them bring in their artistry into the film.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so kind of piggybacking on that, so we talked about Afrofuturism a little bit, and you talked about it in your talk, and we look at it a lot as from an African American perspective, I think, and I hear you talking about more African traditions and African influences. Do you think this is the right way to look at it, or?
I mean, I think you can look at Afrofuture in many ways. I mean, recently I was looking at old album covers of Parliament Funkadelic and Earth, Wind and Fire, and I was like, Afrofuture! That was my first introduction to it. So we can take that term and know that, yes, it's African tradition, technology, story, creativity, all fused together, but we can also make it our own. I feel like when I was on the set of Selma and working with Ava DuVernay, and she's now a director directing after being a publicist, a unit publicist, I felt like she was envisioning her own Afrofuture and where she lies in this future of creating stories and creating films that inform us, that also give us more to think about. And then she went on to do Origin. I don't know if you saw it. It's an incredible film. Yeah. So I always loosely define the word Afrofuturism because it has changed and it has morphed, but it's always the same, and it's how we see ourselves in tomorrow's world.
Okay. So off of that, what artists, what are you talking about Parliament Funkadelic, what other writers, artists you think people would be interested in?
Oh, well, I'm sure you have all your lists. I mean, musicians I'm into right now, I can think of so many books. I mean, I keep books around me all the time. One of my favorite books is Remnants of Self, and it talks about clothing in the developing world of enslaved people and how they wove the fabrics and they created the garments for this cottage industry during the 1800s. And so I bounce around, I'm obsessed with audiobooks in 1619. Because I think it's important to kind of know where we've been.
Yeah, I know. And then speaking of where we have been, you have 16 period films that you.
Do I have 16?
I read 16.
Okay,
somewhere.
I believe you. It feels like 16.
And when I was reading about these, I was the different. So there's two that I'm looking at: Malcolm X and Amistad, right? Which are two of, I guess, your more prolific period films.
Yeah.
And kind of the time frame. So in Malcolm X, we go through about 4 periods of his life.
Yeah, 4 or 5 periods.
Yep. Yeah. And then Amistad it seems like a longer
1839.
film, but it's 1839. So it's a very short period.
It was the last ship that sailed in the transcontinental slave trade, and they were never enslaved. They were incarcerated, and they went to trial, and then they were allowed to go home. And some decided not to go, and some stayed.
So what were your different approaches? So you're going through 4 periods of someone's life versus a very...
Yeah, well, I was 26 years old when I did Malcolm X. And I had done theater in college, and I had come out and did internships and then met Spike Lee. And he called me early one morning. And, he had done She's Gotta Have It, which went to the Cannes Films Festival, and it won the Grand Prix. And he'd been writing me little postcards, but I was a theater person. I was a thespian, and I was very proud to be a thespian. And my friend said, hey, Spike Lee won the Grand Prix at Cannes for She's Gotta Have It, and I was like, man, I should have wrote him back. Early one morning, before the sun came up, I got a phone call, and I answered, hello, and the person on the other end said, Ruth. I said, hello, Ruth, hello. this is the man of your dreams. And I thought, Denzel? And he was like, no, this is Spike. So we went on to do many films together and have sort of a shorthand, and we decided to do Malcolm X based on Alex Haley's book. And so, you know, I went to Brooklyn, the 40 acres. Spike had just bought a parking garage. One of those parking garages in New York City, they probably have some here too, where you drive into the building and a freight elevator takes your car up and they park your car. He had bought a building like that, and one of his assistants said, hey, Ruth, Spike just bought this building. You should be over there with the wardrobe. So we ended up in there, and every floor of that building, 4 floors, was dedicated to a different era in Malcolm X's life. So it was like the department store of Malcolm X. So if you came in for a fitting, if you were in a scene that was 1930s, you went to the 3rd floor. And it was a wonderful experience because we also went to Egypt and we shot in the desert, and we had a scene where there's a priest in front of the pyramids singing the morning prayer, the Muslim prayer. And we don't do that anymore. This was when I was 26 years old, and I was in charge of this big film. I had done theater and knew how to break down a script. I knew how to do it from my opera days in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the opera. I knew how to do it, but here I was implementing it with a crew of my own. And it was a different experience as a young person, because, you know, when you're young, that's the time to experiment. That's the time to go on an adventure. You know, I tell young people all the time, this is the time to go on an adventure. This is the time to do whatever your heart's desire. You follow your passion now, because later it's going to be harder. And then as I approached Amistad, you know, I went to Steven Spielberg's office. He was shooting Jurassic Park. I walked into a conference room. I'm now 35, I believe, 36 years old. I've been nominated for an Oscar. I'm still very humble. I'm still in the independent film world, working with Keenan Ivory Wayans in Los Angeles, and coming back to New York and working with Spike. So Steven walks in and he sits down. All the chairs are against the walls except for 2, one across one side of the conference table and one on the other. And there's no script. I don't get a script to read before the interview. I've just gone to the library and got Cliff Notes on the Amistad. You remember Cliff Notes, right? So I'm sitting there and he sits down and he says, I loved your work in Malcolm X. I had no idea he would say that. And he said, here's the script, take it home, read it tonight, and let me know if you'd like to work with me. I thought I could call him from the parking lot, honestly.
I think I would have.
Yeah,
I would have called him from the parking lot.
But I went home and my agent called and I got on Amistad. But the approach of 1839, before photography existed. On Malcolm X, I had Gordon Parks, I had Teenie Harris, I had all of the great photographers and their collections too. I had the Schomburg Center for Research, I had the Bettman Gallery, I had Corbis at the time when they all had a photo collection. I could go and his life was actually really well chronicled in photographs. But on Amistad, it was 1839, so I had to go to art history. I had to look in the art books. And I got a collection of books on Blacks in Art. And it was a collection of paintings that maybe the forefront or the main focus of the painting was something else, a person chopping wood. But there was a character in the corner, a little enslaved boy or a person sitting there. And so I started really immersing myself in art collections. And it was a wonderful experience again. DreamWorks sent me all over the world to collect the costumes, and that gave me my second nomination.
And Amistad was filmed where?
It was filmed in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles,
yeah.
okay.
We did go to Connecticut, Mystic Seaport, where we had the ship. We actually had a replica of the Amistad that sailed from Massachusetts to Connecticut and then out to Long Beach. And so it was a lot though, and harder than Malcolm X was, harder because I was in LA and I was under the studio system, and I had leaders like Spike Lee and Keenan Ivory Wayans and Robert Townsend, and we were doing BAPs and I'm gonna get you sucker. We were like having a great time, and then all of a sudden I was locked in to a studio system that had other producers around, and I also I had to learn the politics as well as be creative on a really high level, and it was hard on me as a 35-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. I think we are out of time, guys. Ruth, if you do not have Ruth's book,
I want to answer one question.
Oh, okay. Oh, you want to answer one question? Okay. One audience question. All right.
That was my reminder to throw it to the audience.
Okay. I'm looking at 1.55.
We got one quick. Did she say one quick?
One or two.
She said one or two quick. Okay.
I'll give you my signal.
What, right here?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay, first row, and then you.
I'd like to know a little bit more about the 3D printing of the hat.
The Ishikolo. You can say it, Ishikolo.
Ishikolo.
Yes. Well, we went to a company in Belgium, and the name is just escaping me right now, but she wants to know more about the 3D printing. And the material. Yeah, it was like a flexible resin. And Julia Corner's website, if you go to Julia Corner's, KORNER.com, she shows you how the Ishikolo went in and out of the 3D printer, and I think the company was called Materialize in Belgium that printed. They also printed the headpiece for Wakanda Forever that Angela wore with the big added piece on it. So the flexibility is very strong, and I was really surprised when you see it. It has so many components that have been printed that you think it's like fragile, like it will just crack, but it's very resilient. And I mean, she was on set with the shoulder mantle on, which was several pieces that came out of the 3D printer, and we were covering her in blankets and things to keep her warm, and it didn't move. I mean, it flexed, but it didn't break.
Didn't break.
Yeah.
Second row.
Question about the Basutu blankets. I want to know what the role. I want to know what the role of textile designers are in the work that you do. You mentioned that, I think I heard you say that after shaving and burning the blanket, someone printed the vibranium pattern on it, and then it made me wonder, how are you guys working with other team members in the technical aspects of making things look a certain way that aren't actually printed?
Yes, it's complicated. We do have an aging and dyeing team. They're quite talented. We print big silk screens. Even in the funeral scene in Wakanda Forever, we printed a lot of African patterns on the white cloth so that we could represent different tribes of Africa. But the vibranium is done from a heat printing process, which is like a gold leafing or a leafing process. So each blanket, after it's shaved, these images are printed out onto it and cut away. I'm really not that technical in their job, but they actually did a heat press to get that silver vibranium look on the one side of the blankets. But we usually have a specialty department, and that is comprised of people who know how to work with rubber and leather, and they do all kinds of armor pieces and sculpting. There's also someone who works on computer, and we do print small things a lot like the architects, small belt buckles and things that we can print in 3D in our office. But the aging and dying department are the ones that create the big silk screens for us to do the print work.
Okay. I think we have...
Over there.
Yeah, we got one.
Oh.
We have my... can you stand up so that mic person can locate you?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Oh.
Hi. I was just, so in design, I'm sure you know, it's all about the details. So what are some easily overlooked elements that can really impact the way that an audience understands a character?
There are some pitfalls, sometimes time. Time management is very important. Development of a design. Sometimes schedules change. With the Panther suit, it was not ready. It was not finished when they wanted to shoot. So we used the one from Captain America Civil War in the opening of Black Panther to give us more time to finish that suit. Also, the availability of fabrics, sometimes fabrics that you think are going to be great, they aren't so great, and you have to go back to the drawing board and start over. All kinds of, everything you can think of happens to us for some reason. So I have shoppers all over the world. I work with embroiderers in India. I work with the Weta Workshop in New Zealand. And that also can pose an issue of getting things into the country. You're basically looking at things on Zoom because you can't just pick up and fly to New Zealand and come right back. So they do a lot of videoing of what the components are, and you're making decisions constantly on Zoom. So those are some of the elements. I feel like I could give you more if I think about it hard enough. There's thousands.
One more?
Hi. I have a question. I'm a student currently studying interior design, and I really love historic architecture. I have a background of a little bit of performance and theater art, so I kind of come from a line of thinking of, I love the details and I want every little thing to mean something and have that cultural or historical reference. And as I'm working through projects and learning, sometimes I ask, am I getting too caught up and having to have everything mean something?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you in your line of work where it's really crucial that you're making, appropriate references to a culture or period. If you were to weigh out or give a percentage of how much of your decision making is based off of that historical accuracy or reference, and how much is based off of maybe just your personal intuition or instinct or style, or is your intuition driven by your breadth of knowledge and research?
Oh, nice question. I think it's all of the above. First, you work with historians, and historians keep pointing you in the right direction. With Wakanda Forever, we were exploring the Mayan culture, and the Aztecs were more documented than the Mayans. And so before the historians came on board, we had tons of Aztec photos, and they informed us that this is a smaller community, was more coastal, and so we had to switch our base. And that is usually our base. We are inspired by the cousins of the history books, but we are creating an entertainment medium. And so to be inspired by it means that we have the ability in a film like that to create this underwater world where we bring in imagination and creativity. So we'll look at what's under the water, what kinds of kelp could we use to mimic what fins and feathers would look like in their culture. So you start with that historic base because you really don't want to be really that off base because it's somebody's life, it's somebody's history, it's someone's culture, and they want you to represent it in the best way that it could be represented, even if you're going to be imaginative with it. So all of the elements of that is a part of what builds a world.
Okay, we are, give a hand to Ruth Carter. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.